Hi there, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video, and I'm very excited to bring to you attorney Brian Jones. And today we are going to be talking about a 19-year-old boy who is fighting to get himself off of the sex offender list after engaging in a Romeo-Juliette romance in high school. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Erica. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much. Now, I had actually, when doing research on this, I had not heard the term Romeo-Juliette instances here with sex crimes. So if you could just, I guess, give us the definition of that and what does a Romeo-Juliette relationship entail besides being killed at the end of the story?
Yes, what it doesn't involve is Mercutio picking a fight that then leads to a family feud. What it does refer to is two individuals who are, it varies state by state. In Ohio, they're within 4 years of one another. But one of the individuals is under the age of consent and the other is over the age of consent. You can see the absurdity of prosecuting a 16-year-old who is 16 and 1 day old for having sex with a 15 and 364 day old. But that is a crime, or that would be a crime if there weren't these exceptions to what most people think of as statutory rape laws.
So that is what happened with this boy. He was 17 at the time, and she was, I believe, 14 or 15.
15,
and yeah, and she has written letters and spoken out about how the sex was consensual. Her parents, although not happy about it, still said, hey, the sex was consensual. He should not have been arrested and thrown in prison. He should not be on the sex offender list. Now, if you have someone, typically we're talking about someone who's accusing someone else. In this case, we're talking about someone who is saying, hey, no, like this was all consensual. He shouldn't be arrested, yet he's being arrested because of the laws. Can you explain a little bit about how that can happen?
Sure. So the situation here was in Michigan. And it would not likely happen in Ohio because of these exceptions. It also wouldn't likely happen in Ohio because she came forward and admitted that she deceived the family about her age. Under Ohio law, unlawful sexual conduct with a minor requires knowledge or a reason to believe that the underage person is in fact underage. So an example that we had, case we took to jury trial on and secured a not guilty verdict on, was a young lady that showed up to a rock band practice. There was a rock band and they held open practices on weekends that they didn't have booked shows for. So she shows up, she's driven herself to the location, she has cigarettes, she has beer, and she has marijuana. And our client met her over the course of the evening, saw her smoking, learned that she had driven herself there, saw her drinking alcohol. And while he suspected she wasn't 21, he firmly believed that she was certainly over the age of 18. Well, it turned out that she was in fact 14 years old. I met the young lady at trial. She testified. You could absolutely mistake her for an 18-year-old, and especially in the context. And so, that's the sort of situation that we run into in these types of cases.
So you have special circumstances where someone would not be accused of, they would not be sent to jail and put on a sex offender list with these Romeo-Juliette romances. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct.
And so that was great. So when you're looking at a case like that, you are looking for someone to come forward and you're looking at the circumstances. You're looking for someone to say, hey, you know what, I did trick them. I did not tell them what my age was. And man, she sounded like she was showing up there ready for a party.
Absolutely. And what we're looking for in addition to that is context. So again, you highlighted it. We're at a party. We're at a party for adults. Um, we're looking, is this individual drinking? Does this individual have tattoos? Is this individual smoking cigarettes? And nowadays, smoking cigarettes in many locations in Ohio is indication that that person is 21, because many municipalities have passed laws that supersede the state and federal laws for 18 to be a purchaser of tobacco.
Wow. I mean, that's really interesting. And that's way above the age of consent for sexual conduct, which is what
Absolutely.
age is it 16 where you are in Ohio?
16 is the cutoff, correct?
So that's really interesting. Now, I have a marketing assistant here, and she was telling me that in high school, she's a millennial, that in high school, they actually spoke about these Romeo Juliet romances and even about sexual harassment and getting put on sex offender lists for just slapping a girl's butt in gym class. Now, that is not the right thing to do, but it may not be something that would make somebody lose their whole life and not be able to work where they want to work and live where they want to live, and just wear that scarlet letter for the rest of their life.
Exactly, Erica. First, we start with the foundational knowledge and the science that sex offender registration lists aren't effective. They cause more crime than they prevent. And they are overbroad in the number of people that get added to them. And that problem was exacerbated by the Adam Walsh Act passed by Congress and signed into law back during the Bush administration. And the Adam Walsh Act basically restricted federal funding to states if they didn't create a no discretion tier system tied to the particular offenses of conviction. See, before that, we had what was called Megan's Law. And under Megan's Law, judges had discretion as to what level a person is put on for sex offender registry. And before that, there was registry, but judges had absolute discretion as to whether an individual would go on it at all. It's my opinion, Erica, that judges are in the best position to make these decisions. And some people absolutely are sexual predators, and the public should know about them. But the reality is the vast majority of people who are convicted of sex offenses don't fall into that category. And the reality is longer terms of probation, more intense probation that includes treatment, and some more intense scrutiny through supervision is really more than effective to make sure that these individuals get the treatment they need, get the counseling they need, and prevent them from committing future crimes. Rather than putting them on a sex offender list that then prevents them from getting a job, prevents them from living with family members, and sometimes even prevents them, as in the case that we're discussing today, prevents them from seeing their own sons.
Yeah, I mean, it's the poor kid was put in jail, and although they were able to get him out on bail, and wait for the whole court system to work its magic, it was still, he was not allowed to move back in with his parents. And we did a whole segment on this a few weeks ago where we talked about sex offender village. Well, he was essentially ostracized because his parents lived near a waterway with a dock, and they lived too close, so he had to move across town. And in addition, he had an interest in going to school for computer engineering. And when you're on the sex offender list, you're absolutely not allowed to have jobs that have to do with computers. And so he was looking at, more working with his hands and that sort of thing. But it was definitely quite a hardship for him. And he had no idea that she was the age that she was.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a misnomer, Erica, that individuals aren't allowed to work with computers. That very well may have been a condition of his probation or his parole, that his parole officer wouldn't allow him access to computers, but people are allowed to have computers. The point, though, is still accurate, that people are prevented from obtaining employment in certain fields. They're banned from obtaining licenses in a variety of fields that really doesn't make any sense. And a lot of employers just won't hire them because of their status as a sex offender registrant.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry if I misspoke about that. I did mean that he was looking at a career with computers, and he was not allowed he's not looking at doing that now. I mean,
Yep.
we'll see what happens in the end. Hopefully all of this gets cleared up. And they did say that, had this happened in Michigan, but had it happened in Indiana, um, it right across the line, the state line, that it wouldn't have been a problem at all. He would have never gone to jail.
Yep. And if it had happened in Ohio, it likely wouldn't have been the problem that it is for him now. And I think that's the real irony of this case, Erica, is that he has moved to Ohio. And the reason that he now has lifetime sex offender registration is because the Ohio Attorney General has adopted a policy that anybody who comes from a state outside of Ohio and comes into Ohio and has a registration category that's different from what Ohio's current scheme is, or what Ohio's scheme was at the time of that conviction, gets put on the sex predator list, the highest tier. The Ohio Attorney General defaults them to the highest tier, and that is absolutely wrong. It's wrong according to the law. There's case law that supports my position that these individuals should have an individualized assessment, that their sex offender registration time period should match the time period that they would have been on registration had they remained in the state of conviction. But the Ohio Attorney General continues to ignore that case law and make individuals sexual predators. We have 3 open files right now where we are contesting that designation.
So it sounds like he should give you a call.
We would be happy to help him if he did.
What do you think is going to happen in the future for this 19-year-old boy?
It's hard to say. If he's got an attorney that has done his research or done her research and raises the right issues in court, he should be able to have that terminated. Unfortunately, that is a costly process, and it's a costly process that he shouldn't have to go through because it's a mistake that the state of Ohio has made.
They did talk about how the parents had to dip into their retirement and his college fund in order to pay for lawyer fees.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that is definitely, it's a tragedy on so many levels. And thank you so much for providing so much clarity on this hot topic that's in the news right now. That's one of the great things about talking to you, is that, we can really talk about the current events and the issues that have to do with sex crimes and different crimes that happen around the United States. So is there anything else you'd like to talk about when it comes to this particular example and this case that really has delineated a lot of the points that we made in previous interviews?
For sure. So, one of the interesting things about this case to me, and we touched on it briefly, was the lack of knowledge that he had of her age. And while we don't know the particularities of this case during the investigative phase, I have had numerous situations where individuals have come into the clutches of law enforcement, made statements assuming the police knew what they were talking about, when in reality, the police were just guessing and trying to get them to make a confession. And the importance of reaching out to counsel before speaking to police is of paramount importance, because it's so much more critical to identify what the police know and not make statements on your own assuming they know what they're talking about and assuming they have your best interests at heart. That's number one. Number two, I would encourage anybody out there to go and do the research about people who are on the sex offender registry. because the reality is they're your neighbors, they're your coworkers. Ohio is one of the states that has community notification. So for some people, people that are tier 3 and have community notification requirements, you get a little flyer in the mail that says, so and so living at such and such an address is a registered sex offender, and what their conviction was, and a whole bunch of other information about them. But for tier 1 and tier 2 individuals, those flyers never go out. Now there's a website, and if you look around your neighborhood, you're going to find these people. And my guess is you're going to say to yourself, wow, I had no idea Roger was, on this list. Because the reality is they're living among us, and they're not committing crimes, and they're not dangerous. The vast majority of these individuals made one terrible mistake, which landed them in the hot pot that they have to live the rest of their lives in.
Yeah, and in this particular case that we're talking about, the alleged victim is saying, actually, this was consensual. He's not a sex offender. He's not out there trying to hurt people and have sex with underage kids. We're close in age, and I didn't tell him I was 15 instead of 16.
Exactly.
And so he shouldn't have to pay for that for the rest of his life. In fact, she has said, I should be the one that gets in trouble for this.
She did. She wrote it in a letter to the court.
That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
Strong statement.
Absolutely.
So, so thank you so much for clearing a lot of this up. We will keep our eyes open for more interesting cases in the news. And certainly, if you or someone you know needs representation in a sex crime, or if they have questions about a situation that they're not even sure they're accused of yet, we talked about that. Sometimes people are doing the research and they're getting ready to bring charges forth. If something happens, even if you haven't been charged yet, please give Brian Jones a call, because himself and the attorneys that work there are fantastic. They know their law. They know your rights, and they will help find the best solution for you.
Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a great day.